Hello, welcome back to another episode of the BARROW Podcast. Today we're going to be looking at This House of Grief by Helen Garner, the story of a murder trial. And I might start with a blurb for people who, don't know this case or Helen Garner, and we can sort of introduce her a little bit as well. But basically, on Father's Day 2005, 3 young boys drowned when the car their father was driving went off the road and plunged into a dam. And this is based on the Robert Farquharson case, where his 3 children were in the backseat of their father's car as it was coming back from like an access visit on Father's Day. And then it went off the freeway and into a dam, and it basically brought up this whole thing of whether it was an intentional act or an accident. And it became this kind of, in Australia, like national, media frenzy. It was like the case of the century at the time, in a way. And a lot of effort went into the sort of forensic analysis of the tyre tracks and
how it could possibly happen. But also highlighting access arrangements and what, where do people's emotions go after a breakup, and it looked at all of those things.
Yeah, for sure. It became like, about sort of domestic violence and like, control and fathers and men and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the case is really complicated because it's like, it's one of those cases where it's good fodder for the media because it's like one of those water cooler conversations, because there's so much to get. You can look at it so many different ways, but one of the ways was always like the angle of the car and the velocity and the direction and the kind of like the physics and the science of it.
Yeah, and the background to that is the emotional question. Oh, that couldn't be deliberate. Could it?
Yeah.
Could it? And so on.
And that's the basic thing. It's like the premise is like, could a father kill his 3 children on purpose, right? What I was going to say as well on the kind of like just for context, for anyone who doesn't know the case. So Farquharson's defense was this. He said that it was not intentional, that it was an accident, and specifically he suffered an intense coughing fit. That was what he said.
And did have some medical background.
Yep. There was some truth to the potential that he had these coughing fits.
Yep.
He says that he passed out or blacked out behind the wheel, essentially, and woke up. The car had gone into the dam, which is basically like a small lake or a man-made lake. And he came to and he got out of the car and flagged down a passing vehicle and went to the children's mother's house to report them as dead. Now,
and then, of course, so many questions come into that because the deliberate actions afterwards didn't match up with it was just something. And then why wasn't he really trying to help the children out?
Why wasn't he? Yeah. So the immediate questions that the police had was like, why didn't he get back in the dam and try to swim down to the car? And, why didn't he call emergency services instead of going to the children's mother's house initially? And so like his response was called into question by the prosecution and it became this big thing. But as you rightly point out, the fundamental thing underpinning this case and why it became this big event was like, could that really happen? The premise of like a father doing this intentionally, is that even possible?
Yeah.
And of course we know that these things are possible, and family annihilators have been an historic fact, you know.
Yeah, but I think because they are so far removed from people's actual life experience that there is a forever question mark.
Yeah.
And that case goes on to go to appeal. And
well,
so
do you want to?
so
I was going to ask you. Do you want to tell the listeners, like, for anyone who doesn't know the case, like, what was the eventual outcome? He was found
guilty
Right.
of
Of murder.
yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was an appeal.
There was an
Maybe
appeal not so long ago. I mean, we're talking years ago, but not that long ago
Yeah.
in real terms.
but I think there might have even been two. I'm getting confused
Yeah.
now with the details myself, but it went on, and people would come back to it and bring new. There was even new forensic evidence looked at again about the position of the car and everything.
They keep questioning
And-
this. They keep questioning the science of the car. Like, yeah,
Yes, running alongside that is the emotional grief. I mean, the ex partner is on his side initially.
initially through the first trial. Yeah.
Yep, and then that changes.
That's right.
And then there's other evidence brought in that the people heard him talk about this being a possibility because he was so distraught from the breakup. Yeah,
The theory-
it's just been an ongoing matter.
And the running theory and what I think he was ultimately convicted of, I mean, it's a murder, but the idea I think that the prosecution puts forward is that this is meant to be a murder-suicide. He's meant to go into the dam with
Yes.
the kids and kill them all, himself included. But he panics and he gets himself out of the car out of almost reflex and,
Yep.
potentially cowardice
and
or whatever.
then panics by running to the wife and I didn't mean this, I didn't mean this.
Yeah. And so that's the theory
That's
that's put
simplifying it.
put forward, and like we don't have an opinion either way about his guilt, but this is like these are the facts of the
Yeah.
case. He was convicted. He was found guilty.
Yes.
It has, as Mum said, it's gone to other trials and there's been appeals. I mean, and it's always the science of the car and the velocity and the wheels and all sorts of stuff. It's quite complicated,
Yeah.
but that's the basic thing. But like, why this book and why we chose it was like, basically, working on non-fiction, I mean, I call to mind Helen Garner, who, for listeners who aren't familiar, Helen Garner is an Australian author. This was obviously an Australian case that we're talking about. And look, Garner is kind of like one of those, top living writers. And perhaps for people who are familiar with Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, which is it's kind of a staple of creative non-fiction, which is something that you might come across at university, something I used to teach. But Helen Garner's This House of Grief, and she's written other creative non-fiction titles, including The First Stone, which is about a rape allegation case at the University of Melbourne, and Joe Cinque's Consolation, which was a lawyer in Canberra who was poisoned by his girlfriend, allegedly. I can't remember the outcome of the case, but she's written these kind of, as I say, creative non-fiction titles, and she's very, very good. And I would put her in a category of like, probably top 3 literary authors that Australia's ever produced. That being, Patrick White, who won the Nobel Prize, and maybe one or two others.
This is amazingly written because it keeps that whole tension and even keeps the question. Oh, but there's all this evidence. Oh, could this be real? It keeps that tension right through.
Absolutely. Like Garner is like forever, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about in relation to Garner, actually, and about writers generally. And I don't know how I feel about this, but basically, reading it, I was thinking like, good authors, I think, have a kind of like, when we talk about childlike wonder and seeing the world as if for the first time.
Yes.
Garner has that.
Yes.
So she comes to the case absolutely convinced that it could be nothing but an accident, right? But she's always cross-checking that against the evidence and the mounting sense that, perhaps he's not innocent. And as you say, she keeps that alive, and that's the tension, that's the crux of the book, which she exploits masterfully.
Absolutely.
But in that, I'm sort of like, I'm a little torn, because I think childlike or childish?
Ah,
Do you know what I'm getting at? And I don't have an opinion. I just...
yeah. No, I think it's more just a encapsulation of that tension of I'm looking at the evidence, but I'm really questioning can a human being actually do this?
Yeah.
So no, I just think it's curiosity about human behaviour that go through that book.
See, because I really like Garner, like, as I've said, you know, I would put her in that sort of esteemed class of, like, literary authors. And to talk about Garner is also, I also want to say that, like, they've recently published all her diaries. There have been a series of her diaries that have been published, and her titles have all moved to the States. They're all in, like, when I was in New York in 2019, you could get all of her titles. So she has finally kind of emerged internationally, and that's kind of the esteem that the regard that she's held in. And so I also put her in that category, but I think what is her strength, which is like keeping these kind of these ideas afloat. It's also what I don't like about her, because I find her, and we can get into sort of my take on all of this and our take on all of this, the case itself. I just find her to be irritatingly naive.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is a point in the book where she's chastised by a fellow reporter who says, basically to the effect, oh, you know, shove it up your behind. They do this all the time and they lie. That's what they do. She's talking about men. And I know who that person is because I had dinner with her once. And and it was journalist extended friendships and relationship that I was in, blah, blah, you know, that's the connection.
Yes.
And I knew that woman, she had gone through hell with a husband that had left and had walked out on her and kids, and it had been an absolute animal, and he was a lawyer and he had taken everything and just ruined her as much as he could. And then the boy, their son that they had together, had severe mental health problems, and he had just walked away from it, nothing to do with him, and had new life up in Sydney and whatever. And that is the woman, because she was covering the case. She was a really high profile reporter and actually had to give her career up to look after her schizophrenic son. It is her chastising Helen Garner.
Well, isn't that part of the reason that we're looking at this? Because again,
your experience colours your perception, of course,
absolutely,
as it always does.
Absolutely. And unless you've experienced that kind of madness from an ex-partner, that sheer disinterest in the child, but using the child as a weapon to get back at an ex-partner, unless you have actually experienced that, you probably have many people say, oh no,
it's not possible.
It's not possible. This is a dad and his 3 kids.
Yeah.
Well, we know.
And we talk about, and to take it back for us, we have always talked about narratives on this show. Now, the narrative that is held up by society is that the bond between parent and child is sacred, and it's immovable, and it's, you know, it's intact. Now, if you've experienced anything to the contrary, and I know we've covered this before, but you get this double, life deals you this kind of double unfairness, which is you receive a circumstance in which the narrative you've been promised is broken, but then you are also blamed for it by the people around you who constantly question your perspective. They go, oh, I'm sure he didn't mean that. Oh, come on, he's your old man. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's right.
And the thing is, we will get to what we think about this.
Yes.
But I was not in the majority when I heard this. I went, like the majority reaction to this was, it could only be an accident. This is a terrible tragedy. And I tell you what, it is a weird feeling to be shocked by other people's optimistic point of view.
Yeah.
It's a very awkward position to be in, because we might as well get into what our opinions on it are.
Yeah.
My opinion was, and I'm talking back in 2005, like I just went, well, there's no way it's an accident. You don't accidentally drive off the road into a dam and your children will die. Like,
on Father's Day.
On Father's Day on the way back from Access.
When there's so many aspects around.
And we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But my immediate reaction was, oh, he did it on purpose. Like, that's just a no-brainer. There is no even entertainment for me that it could be an accident. And that is unfortunate. That I'm not
of course.
happy to feel that way.
Yeah.
But I remember being utterly shocked that wasn't people's logical belief.
Right. Yeah.
And I was particularly shocked that, the ex-wife stood by him. I was shocked by all of this. I mean,
right. Yeah.
I have, and this speaks to I have zero trust. I do not believe in the goodness of people. I know.
Yeah, but for good reason.
Yeah. But I'm saying that, like, there wasn't even an inkling of doubt for me. I went, it's so funny to me that this would even be a trial. It is not an accident. There is no world in which this is an accident. It just doesn't exist. And, in terms of casting the first stone, I mean, I would. There is nothing to me about it that even, and that's funny to come from me, because I'm such a entertainer of maybe with people and the grey areas and the nuances of existence.
Yeah, well,
but I hear this and I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, but I mean that just underlines the impact of your own life experience.
Yeah.
And that's.
But what was your take on it? I mean, you probably can't remember back then, and I probably I'm not remembering then. I'm remembering reading this for the first time when it was published, which is very soon after the event. Yeah.
I'm probably just reacting to the book.
Yeah.
And thinking, and following that tension.
Yeah. So you're giving it space as a potential accident.
Yeah, probably.
Really? That's interesting to me.
Which is weird. Mm-hmm. Because I know full well the disregard of children by certain parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that instinct in me to uphold that narrative about parent-child bond, it doesn't exist in me at all.
But neither should it, because of your visceral trauma.
Yeah. We don't need to get into all of that. I'm just saying that it doesn't. And so you give me this and I'm like, oh, guilty. Like, there's not even a...
Yeah.
And I'm laughing. I'm laughing. The coughing fit and the curve of the car, and I'm laughing. Like, it's really, 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 okay, really. And you're going to put everyone through it. You're not just going to say
yes,
because you're weak, and that's why you did it, because you're weak. And me,
and your children have just become a weapon to make a statement because you feel so badly done by. And
that for me, I think what sealed it in my mind is Father's Day. Because that really is probably what I chose this for, and why I wanted to kind of have this discussion was like,
it was performative, if you can describe a dreadful thing like this simply as that.
No, it's not just that. Like, humor, it's sort of staged for drama and maximum effect.
Yeah.
No, there is that component to it, but what I mean though is that like what people don't understand, and this is something I need to think more about how to articulate for the purpose of the memoir perhaps, or maybe an essay or something, is like the unique tension and the unbelievable vulnerability of children in access travel from the end of the time back, going back to the house. Now, you've got to understand how high the tensions are. Now, I'm talking acrimonious circumstances, but you've got children, you've got often a man who life has shown him to be not very much. Like, so he's at a point of self-condemnation, he feels humiliated, he feels all these things. And, you know, to be honest, the system could probably do a better job at like helping men from feeling that way as well. Like, there's another side to that. But I also don't care about that side.
No.
But what I would say is that, like, and this is something we will talk about more in time, but like the way that acrimonious access arrangements generally, even in the best of circumstances, the way it sort of turns children into symbols, and it you know, we've talked about this, and it reduces who they are as little human beings.
That's right, because you've got the man on any given day, the father, in this instance, on any given day feeling that, he comes on site to where he thinks he belongs, and he is no longer there.
Or is returning to that place.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he's taking these little beings, but they're just, in that moment, they're just, well, they're mine. And
they're reminders. See, this is the thing, is that children become reminders of pain, right?
Yes.
And they become reminders of everything that's broken and everything that will never be, okay?
Yeah.
But I think there is a particular tension, a particularly unique circumstance of being returned on access. It's that return trip, right? And the kind of low point that return trip often is and represents and can be, there is a fury that comes up in that return trip. An outrage and a rage. Like, it is like, I have to return my fucking kids to that bitch. And it is so total that men, who are often more impulsive and self-destructive than women, are capable of doing anything. And unfortunately, I know that, because I remember the most amount of terror on access was, there was all the worry and apprehension and fear of going. There was the endurance of the time there, but there was nothing like the holding the breath to make it home. Like, the clock's running out, but the clock's not necessarily running out on, I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be safe. It's actually, the less time to go, the chances things to get worse become. Because you're aware of how irritated the person is. And they're behind the wheel of a car. And you are absolutely defenseless. And that is, those drives, return from access trips, they are the most afraid I have ever felt in my entire life. Because they would always be silent.
Yeah, and what's ticking over in the brain?
What's ticking over in that little brain?
The newly found hatred for the person you've had the children with. Yeah. Yes.
And so when you tell me
that can't happen.
Well, when you tell me that a car is driven into a dam, father behind the wheel with 3 kids and they die. I think tragedy. You tell me it's a return trip from Access and I go, You tell me it's Father's Day and I go, he killed him. Yeah. There's no part of me when you line those things up that I have even a shard of doubt.
Yeah.
Because I know that tension and I know that boiling sense. And also because it's not the only time it's happened. Do you remember the Arthur Freeman case where he threw his daughter off the Westgate Bridge? That was a return from Access. It was a return from Access. That guy was super mentally unwell, but it doesn't change the fact that those conditions were the same.
Yeah, were there. Yeah.
And those conditions and those high points of stress can bring on the onset of the mental illness, right? So regardless of his state of mind, that to me that's irrelevant.
It's very quick from just to the rage.
Yeah. So Arthur Freeman is on a return trip from Access, pulls the car up on the peak of the Westgate Bridge, takes his daughter out from the back seat and tosses her off the bridge over the guardrail. She survives and dies in hospital.
Yeah.
She survives the fall, but not her injuries. And it's I can't remember how old she was. She was tiny. She was 5 years old, 4 years old. And I think the youngest in here is only about that as well. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But the point is that those moments, the travel moments, we've talked about how Access visits, as I've said before, reduce the child to an object and often take the child and enter them into this symbolic realm. You're a symbol of what I've lost. You're a symbol of my failure. You're a symbol of this.
You're also a symbol of the things I now, the people and the situation I now hate.
And so, again, it's like an act of vandalism. It's I know what she, the ex-wife, cherishes most. Well, I'm going to vandalise it.
Yeah, and look, it is as simple and black and white as that. And that's what's not taken into account.
What I lose sight of is how utterly illogical and mad that is. See, that totally makes sense to me and seems not reasonable, but it's logical. Now, I tell that to somebody who has this chipper, upbeat, the world's a wonderful place, and they go, how is that possible? And I have to say, on reflection, I'm kind of happy that people would not think that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And that they haven't had that experience.
Of course.
And they can still be positive about relationships and the way forward. And they can still be positive about, because it comes to this, when relationships break down, and sometimes with mediation, often without, how you're just not on the same wavelength anymore. So if people believe that they can communicate and work things out without sort of taking.
Well, it's like idiots that think they can be friends with their exes and we're going to stay the same. It's well, but you've rejected that person. You've realised they're worthless. You don't even want to sleep with them anymore. So why are you going to be friends with someone who wouldn't?
Well, but that. Well, again, this story, this narrative, this occurrence puts into question how things are worked out in terms of family court, mediation, therapy.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing, I guess, about. I mean, I don't know, go on.
People would say this is just these cases are quite rare.
Yeah. I would say the extreme act is rare.
But the potential for it is not.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I would say.
Yes. I was just going to say
which
that.
Is
And that's what is underestimated.
Yeah. I would say that it's almost kind of like a fetish or a paraphilia or something like this, where it's do you not see a high representation of it because people aren't interested? Or do you not see the representation because people know that there is just too much in the way to ever allow them access to it? So, like, do people not commit crimes because they're good people or because there's a law and they know they'll go to jail? I mean, how many people would actually just walk out of a store with stolen goods if they knew they could get away with it? And that's kind of my thing, is I'm like, I don't think anything really stops people from, like, I'm not saying I think people are bad natured. I don't mean that. I'm just sort of like, well, as I say, you can say, oh, well, this is an outlier. And I would say the end result is an outlier. But I would say that the tension in that car is actually pretty common prior to him killing his children.
Of course. Yeah.
And its potential lethal, fatal, consequence actually is prevalent and persistent across many, many, many cases.
Yes.
I think my father's just too much of a coward to have killed me. Maybe you edit that one out.
But he certainly didn't mind playing around the edges and making you ill. There you go.
He was, like with other things, he was always prepared for someone else to do the dirty work.
Yeah.
So he didn't hurt me directly, but he didn't stop me from being harmed.
No.
Now that,
same thing.
And that's very pernicious. It's very, very, very pernicious. But true. That kind of...
Yeah, and it is true. This is a difficulty, isn't it, when you're trying to tell your story.
Your microphone keeps flopping over.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to adjust it to the top there. Sorry.
This is the difficulty in recounting your own experiences. Because there's so many aspects that you know to be true that other people just could not believe.
Yeah.
It's always a difficulty, isn't it?
Well, see, so this raises another thing, right? And I don't know how to sort of feel or position myself here, is that, like, what I've said, that, there's a potential threat that is common, well, there is no way to prove that, right?
No.
Because if it doesn't end in the worst case result...
Yes, it's not evidenced.
It's not evidenced, right?
Yeah.
So you're in this weird bind because then you're advocating for, and I'm not advocating for this, for people to just make willy-nilly accusations about people and say, no, I get a bad sense about this person. And it's like, well, hang on, how do you police an off feeling, right? Because that opens the door to anybody could say anything about anybody.
Yes.
Like, how many times has anyone rubbed somebody up the wrong way? Like, you can't go to jail for that. But this is the difficulty, I think, of family court, family law, of, like, you're basically trying to prosecute future problems, things that haven't occurred yet.
Yes.
And it's like, but you can't. Like, I mean, in the case of, another case, the Batty case, where he murdered his son with the cricket bat.
Yes.
And, in her case, the mother had been, I think she'd been a victim of domestic violence and had, like, been tearing her hair out with trying to get, intervention orders against the father and saying, he is going to kill someone. He's going to kill someone. And the police are going, well, we've put intervention orders in place. We've done everything to the extent of what we can genuinely do.
Yes.
Other than put him in jail, but he hasn't committed a crime.
Yes.
And then he did end up murdering his son. So it's like, well, she's not crazy or hysterical. She knows.
Yeah.
But so it's such awful terrain. It really is. I mean,
Of course.
it's
You
disturbing
can't,
terrain.
You actually can't put in place something that will rid the world of these outlier incidents.
You can't? You sure you can't?
We won't go there. You've stopped me right in my tracks there.
I can think of a few things you could do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, that's the thing is like the only things that one could do are really objectionable, you know. I mean, they, you know, they involve violating people's human rights.
That's right.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I don't really have a problem with.
Well, it gets back to the extent of how violated you feel. And we're going to your case again. There were violations.
Yeah, which I was never really given... I was never able to sort of state them, you know? Like, I was never... And even if I had been given sort of the space for that, who knows how well I could articulate them. See, that's another thing, is like, so you take child me and you put me in therapy or something, right?
Yeah.
And then I say whatever I say. Then the argument is, well, the therapist has manipulated the child and sort of led them up the garden path. And there's so much grey area in all of this,
I know.
you know, which is why life is so...
Which is why you can't make rules and regulations to fit all circumstances.
Yeah. I think the only thing that you can do really is like talk about this stuff enough that...
To make people aware. Not to make them negative, but to make them aware.
Not to make them negative, but to create an atmosphere of people communicating more.
Yeah.
And sort of going like, oh, he seems upset or unwell. You know, I don't know. I think you can kind of like bolster the culture that way somehow. I think potentially.
Yeah.
But certainly, I mean, the reason I wanted to do this book was like, it brings up all this grey area. And where family law, family court, family violence, all that sort of stuff is concerned, I mean, I do just find it like, I find it horrible. I find it exhausting. And I don't really know how, in relation to what we're doing, I don't always know how to navigate it, because it's like, yeah, you are often dealing with like feelings and senses and in where you don't have the worst case scenarios. You're just really dealing with like a vibe or a mood or whatever.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder how relatable what I've said about the return trip. I'm sure if people were listening to this, they would be like, oh yeah, no, that's a thing. Like I'm not crazy. I mean, I lived through it, and I know the kind of
feelings that you felt.
Yeah. And the fragility and the vulnerability and the terror of those moments. And there is nothing as frightening as being in a car with somebody who you know who's driving.
Could easily be out of control.
Yeah, yeah. Who's in a, you know, an agitated state. All right, well, look, I think that's probably enough on this one. I mean, look, I can't recommend this House of Grief enough in terms of the writing, in terms of the book, and in terms of like the compelling case that it is. So, you know, if you're in the mood for like a really gripping true crime story, this is absolutely worth reading. And as I say, and I mean this genuinely, the only thing that I find comparable to this is actually In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, which is, you know, like that's a 1 in a million book, right? Like, I know, I don't think you've read that, but like it, you know, it's a staple of writing workshops at university. So that's the caliber of writing. But I will also say that, like, on Garner's work, I do struggle with, she's such a great writer, but then what irritates me is what I perceive as a naivety, but what really irritates me is her choice of subjects. And I will say that reading her work is in the stratosphere.
Yeah.
Her subjects are below the pavement. And I just often find, like, is any of this worth writing about? Like, is this worth exploiting with your ability? Like, her ability is so elevated that I just wish she would write about. And I don't know what that is, but I get the feeling like, and maybe this goes to one of those ethical questions about true crime. It's like, is Robert Farquharson's name worth cementing in history? I mean, this man is...
True. Yeah.
This is someone who should not be printed about, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to repeat what we've mainly said right throughout, is that we come to this particular narrative with our own narrative and our own experiences.
She's interested in that mushroom case too in Gippsland, which is another one that I don't understand.
No.
I don't understand people's fascination in it. But yeah, sorry, did I cut you off?
Yeah, no, but we're particularly sensitive in this case because it speaks to, our own experiences.
I just think that point of travel on access visits to and from, like, they're incredibly lonely and incredibly vulnerable moments in a child's life. And unless you've been that kid on the back seat with that loser dad driving you home.
Yeah, you cannot possibly understand that. I mean, who you were coming home to didn't really understand it. I was just glad you were home.
Sure.
You'd go away and play. I know. And you'd
I'd be very subdued.
you'd held your breath as the mother, held your breath all weekend, but never really knowing the depth of what you experienced.
No.
Other than it was,
and it hasn't been until now that we've been able to sort of like communicate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. I find this fascinating. Yeah. This aspect of life, like, it's really grubby and it's unpleasant, but I do find it's worth noting. And I suppose maybe that's Garner's defense, is like,
I was going to say, because this particular case raises all of those things, and it may be.
By the way, like, I don't want to come across like I'm down on Garner. I think I have said, I think I've already said, it's so elevated. Yeah. I think she's a fucking genius. Like, sorry, I think she's a genius. I've got to stop. I'm cutting out the swears. Yeah. There was something about the book that I wanted to get into, but I think I'm going to get into it on the next one. So the next book that we're going to look at is Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kaysen, and we will talk about it there. But there's sort of Farquharson's dealings with the mental health systems did raise some things for me that I think are worth checking out. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Bye.